You want to know what I learned this week? Guess. Never mind. You won't be able to. Whales, okay, used to be big mice. Yeah, let me tell you about it. So, back in the day, in the Himalayas, of all places, there used to be this mouse. But it wasn't a mouse, because it was huge. Like a raccoon-sized mouse. With hooves. Hooves like a deer. And it ate like a deer. It was herbivorous. But, okay. But, remember that it eats plants, okay? Because eventually, it slowly starts to realize that there's more food around water sources. So it starts hanging around river deltas, and while it's slinking around the river, it realizes, hey, there's a lot of little creatures around here. I could definitely eat that. And so it does. It becomes carnivorous. And it starts going in the water more and more to the point where it becomes semi-amphibious. And its hooves become webbed feet. Yeah. You want to know what else has 4 legs, is semi-amphibious, and is a freshwater predator? Crocodiles. That's right. This was a prehistoric, furry crocodile. It gets better though. As it gets more and more amphibious, it starts to build up a tolerance to salt water. And instead of going back to land, it starts going out to sea. At this point, this thing looks awful. Terrifying. It's lost its fur. It's got giant teeth in a long snout. And its back legs are just flopping around because at this point, they're practically useless. They're just there for fun. And you're wondering, what does this have to do with whales? Get this. This abomination of nature is the first animal to officially be considered a cetacean, which is the same category that whales and dolphins are put under now. And it started as a deer mouse. But there's still 2 unanswered questions. How do they know that the deer mouse turned into the first cetacean? And how do they know the first cetacean turned into whales? For the first question, okay, hear me out. Ear bones. Yeah, ear bones. The deer mouse had a hard bone plate in its inner ear that has only ever been found in cetaceans. This would also explain why modern whales have chambered stomachs. Okay? When chambered stomachs are usually used to process plant matter and are found mainly in, you guessed it, hooved herbivores. Why would an aquatic carnivore have a chambered stomach if it didn't evolve from something that did? Yeah. Now, when we try to get from the first cetacean to whales, it gets a bit more obvious, okay? Whales, if you didn't already know, have pelvises. Weird. Completely useless pelvises that are completely detached from their spines And also tiny, because over time they've shrunk since they lost their back legs. Another thing that they've lost in moving from land to sea: melatonin production, meaning they can't achieve deep sleep, meaning they also don't have circadian rhythm. They just choose when is best to sleep. Not that they even really sleep. They just turn off half of their brain for a time, while the other half goes into autopilot. Crazy. Anyway, that's what I learned about whales this week. You want to know what I learned this week? There are rooms on this earth that are so silent, you can hear your own lungs expanding. So, what they do is they cover all of the walls and the floor in these foot-tall foam pyramids made of ferrite. It's like a ceramic material, but made of iron, but it's also a foam. I don't know how they do that. At the end of the day, these pyramids are so absorbent that they not only absorb sound waves, but also radio waves. It absorbs electromagnetic radiation. Is that why they make radiation shields out of ceramic? I think it just clicked for me. Imagine you're in a room entirely made of mirrors, and you're trying to look at yourself. There's countless reflections, right? Because all of the mirrors are reflecting off of each other. That's what sound is like in a normal room. The sound waves are bouncing off the walls into each other, vibrating the air particles to create constant reflections of itself. It's how we get certain ambiances and how we replicate certain reverbs. These rooms are as if you painted over all of those mirrors with the flattest black paint you could find. The room is completely dark. No reflections and no light. The only thing the sound wave has to bounce off of is the air itself. It gets so quiet to the point where the room reads as -9 decibels. Right? I didn't even know that was possible. That's why they use these rooms to test things like radio antenna and headphones and speakers. Because it's the only way to get a truly accurate, clean sound without reverberations getting in the way and messing up the readings. Apparently, a bunch of wacky stuff also happens to your body when you stay in there too. Like what? Well, what happens first is your brain eventually adjusts to the lower levels of stimuli. So you begin hearing things you otherwise naturally tune out on the day-to-day. So you'll start to hear stuff like your heartbeat, your stomach digesting, or your lungs expanding as you breathe. The things you really have no business hearing because, ew. After an hour, you won't be able to walk straight because your balance is heavily reliant on your inner ear. So you would have to sit down or else you would just fall over. Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, so basically, how your body balances is based on fluid-filled organs in your ear. Depending on what position your head is in, the fluid moves around and causes the organs to expand. When they expand, it then moves the sensory hairs that are on the outside, which then send signals to your brain as to what position you're in. It's why you know when you're upright, even in the dark. Once these organs begin to deteriorate, or one of them fails, you get vertigo. So what happens in a room this quiet is your inner ear, which is so used to the constant stimuli. The lack of vibrations confuses it, and you can't gain your balance. You want to know what I learned today? Aspirin has been a thing basically since the dawn of civilization. Well, not technically aspirin, because that's a specific thing that was trademarked and now is only generic as of 1919, but we'll get to that later. Originally, back in ancient Sumer, in Egypt, and Greece, they used willow bark to alleviate pain. This use of willow extract evolved in small ways, but stayed relatively the same for thousands of years, until chemists were able to distill the specific chemical within the willow leaves that alleviates pain and fever. This distilled powder was used for a while, but it was super harsh on the stomach since it was quite acidic. In the 19th century, chemists began dabbling in organic synthesis to recreate natural compounds and rework them. This is also true with the salicin powder they extracted from willow. In the 1820s, a chemist from Bayer Company was able to reconstitute the salicin to be less acidic and named it aspirin, which we've been using ever since. How does it work? I don't actually know. Wait, let me look it up. So really, what's happening when you're feeling pain is the nerve endings where the trauma is happening are sending signals to the brain because of something called prostaglandins. It's a protein. Signals to the nerves that damage is occurring in cells. And then it fills the blood vessels with immunoresponders to fight infection. That's what causes the inflammation whenever you get hurt. After the cortex receives the pain signal, the salience network decides that the pain is the main priority for your brain to focus on. The modulation network sends endorphins. Oh, this is interesting. Chronic pain is partially affected by the efficacy of this system, since everyone's is different. Historically, medical treatment tried to target how most people feel pain. But now, they're using MRIs to map neural pathways to tailor-make pain treatments, since different treatments target different systems in the brain.